So I watched the Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein last night, and it was unsatisfying to me. But I put it that way instead of saying it's bad or whatever it is, because I don't think it's bad. I think what's really interesting is that this marvelous person, this Mary Shelley, she wrote it. Well, it was published when she was 21. We don't know. She might have written it even earlier than that. Um, um, but what I've gotten is it's a novel. It's a novel that I love, and I've read the unabridged. There's an abridged and an unabridged, and the unabridged is quite you know quite overwhelmingly brilliant. Not just because of the art, the prose, but also because of the ideas and the ideas. The idea seems to me to be at least a neutral look at what Western civilization is so proud of itself over, which is its science, this sort of hubris, the kind of hubris that starts probably famously with Dr. Faustus. Um, that this idea that contained in the Christian tradition anyway, and it's got nothing to do with Jesus. It's whatever happened, the combination of the great civilization that came out of Christianity, which people always claim came up with all these original ideas like mercy and taking care of the stranger and all that sort of stuff, which it didn't. It predates it. The tradition predates Christianity by thousands of years on those subjects. But that's fine, But the other side of I've been working on this thing about Dante, the comedy, the Divine Comedy, and the whatever. And it's fascinating because one's struck by how exhausting the life is or was, the Pilgrim's Progress, this constant suffering, this constant motion, this constant going forwards, growth, if you like, which becomes part of our economic discussion always. Growth, 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 growth. As if there's some sort of, and maybe that's part of what those particular religions are about, is it's about achieving an ideal. And we think that's an ideal. It's an ideal to achieve an ideal. And so that creates a certain kind of a personality, a certain kind of a human being, Dr. Frankenstein. And then you get the opposite, the monster who doesn't have a name. Ha ha ha. And you realize that he's really rather the opposite. He's trying simply to exist, to live. He's not striving for anything. He's not, he just wants to exist, which is a much more, the only way I can describe it is to say that that's a much more pre-striving monotheistic notion, this idea of the perfect God. The more ancient gods were not perfect. In fact, they were to not be copied, and they were not to be listened to when they were laying down their laws. They were full of deceit and fictions and petulances and stuff like that, the Greek pantheon, for instance. So this idea of this sort of perfect God we're supposed to aspire to, which of course is impossible because everything that he demands of us is inhuman, celibacy and all those kinds of things. And so it's interesting to watch them strive. Oscar Isaacs is a wonderful, wonderful actor, trying to create this personality who's a very important personality today. The Dr. Frankenstein, the Dr. Faustus, the creator, the hubristic creator, because He is not just some fictional character. He is us. He's the present. He is AI. He's creating AI. He's Elon Musk. He's creating all of these things that we have created as a civilization. We've created a world that is heating up at a terrific pace. And we never questioned that as we were bumbling along our way. We somehow made this pursuit of ever more glorious man-made robots and automobiles and aeroplanes and computers and all, and we have a thing about that. Um, and so, insofar as it doesn't cause us to boil to death, which is what it probably will do quite soon. But let's say that before that was going on, it seems to me that it takes the human being into a certain place within themselves. We have marvelous, almost infinite faculties, facilities, possibilities, but we have chosen this gadget-filled, stuff-filled existence. And the world of Frankenstein, for instance, is a very affluent world, and it's chock-a-block with stuff. Beautiful Gothic buildings, and he never seems to run out of money. I mean, he's in this version, he's being financed by Christoph Waltz, the character, and that's an interesting interpolation. It's not in the original. I don't really understand, and maybe this is the problem. I think even Guillermo and most filmmakers are avoiding that central issue. So they keep adding these bits to the story. So they seem to be involved in making the story without the core of the story. And I remember the last time I read, it's a while ago, probably 15 years ago, that I read the full unabridged Frankenstein. And I was again struck, the same thing that happened to me when I read it in my early teens, is that it's very hard to get particularly interested in the doctor. You're interested in his wife. You're definitely interested in the monster, in the blind man. All many other characters are in the thing. And the weird thing is that the doctor is us. He is he is what we have done. He is exactly what we are, and maybe that's why the filmmakers steer clear of that. The James Whale masterpiece, and then The Bride of Frankenstein, the two masterpieces with Boris Karloff. Kind of, the doctor's a little campy, is a little kind of Mel Brooksy, looking at it at this distance, because we don't want to come to terms with this rather shallow, dull, hubristic creature that runs our world. It's very Elon Musk, very Bill Gates, very these chaps. Which isn't to say that there is a brilliance. I acknowledge that, but there's a brilliance in a certain direction, and it's not very profound or deep. And when we're exposed to the opposition, when we're exposed to the Boris Karloff or this new chap, young chap who's marvelous in the film, we naturally go, oh, that's my struggle, is that I'm watching something so human and elemental, but the story dwells on this idiot, essentially. And maybe it's because the filmmaker, the film director, is closer to the idiot. That somehow the whole notion of film is an interesting one, because we've got the novel. So in other words, we've all got the movie in our head, and then they feel it necessary to go ahead and make a version.